One more thing on social media. China, TikTok, let's bring this together. It's supposed to be banned.
Yeah. There's a follow-up here, which is very interesting.
If you want to say anything, but they keep delaying it. Big news is that I think by the end of August, the international version of the app is supposed to be banned, and TikTok is launching a new US only version of TikTok called M2 or something. Do you have the details?
Slightly different than that. Okay. So TikTok is supposed to be banned. There's a law that we talked about this last week. It's supposed to be banned. Trump's just stalling it just because of pure vibes. Supposedly there might be a buyer. The reason a buyer is really unlikely for TikTok is because the core app is developed in China. So there's it's owned by a Chinese company. The idea that they are going to give up the algorithm to TikTok, this wildly successful thing, they won't want to do it. Not only is that just a stupid business decision, it also, there's a degree of national pride that China has created this international phenomenon that's extremely rare and uncommon. And it would be a big hit to the idea of China wanting to export culture. And
it's like giving up Labubu dolls. You just couldn't. You know what I'm saying?
And so this is, most people would agree, untenable. There is no way that, and actually here, I have this article here as well. You can pull up on there's no way that the Chinese company is going to be willing to sell the algorithm, which again is developed by Chinese engineers by ByteDance in China. So TikTok is technically a separate company than Douyin, which is the Chinese version, but it's still Chinese engineers, right? And that's the challenge. So this new one they're going to do is called M2. And the idea is it's going to be an app and a company that is entirely made within the US. And that way they can tell the US regulators, hey, this has nothing to do with China. So it means moving the tech stack from China to an American company. And from a technical perspective, probably it means forking the code in some way, but it's not clear what this means because again, ByteDance does not want to give up the code that allowed them to make TikTok. They don't want to give that away. And so the whole weirdness around selling TikTok is there's no way they'll sell the core thing that makes TikTok run. At most, they would sell basically the name TikTok and a bunch of data, which is not valuable. And so there's this inherent disconnect between the idea of selling TikTok and what ByteDance might actually do. This is their attempt to get around it, seemingly. And so the specific dates, they're going to launch this in September 5th, and then they're going to shut down TikTok on March 26th. So their idea is we will force everybody on TikTok to migrate to an app which is legitimately centralized and developed in the United States, and then it'll be a kind of separate thing. And if that pans out, then maybe they don't need to be banned.
So interesting, though, because that's like us soft creating our own great firewall. Do you know what I'm saying? The idea that it has to be a US-based app that is for other US users only.
So we don't have a lot of details about it. The idea would be the algorithm and what powers it and the data are all US-based, but it would still be able to interact with international people.
Right, but I assume someone in France is keeping the same version of TikTok, and you are on M2.
Yeah.
So unless they cross-share videos,
yes, they would.
They would.
Yeah. So the idea is you still, because I think TikTok is aware that if the United States gets removed from the TikTok ecosystem, it all fails, right? We are too much of a cultural center, right? You can't just pull away the US and not have everybody else flood.
If I'm not dancing on there, it's not going to last.
Right.
You know what
that's what draws the people in.
Doing some of this is like how the app stays afloat.
If my 20,000 viewer TikTok clips of my stream don't keep going up, the site will crumble.
We don't have squeaks on there.
But what makes TikTok work culturally is the international spread, right? So you need to keep that fabric going. The challenge is that you need to have the algorithm of the app not developed by China. So the idea here is that Americans will use an app that can still connect with the international version of TikTok, but it would be two different recommendations algorithms. One is developed by United States, one is developed by ByteDance. So you would never really know if you're going to have a different experience. Yeah. It'd be this very strange thing. So there's a lot of unknown about this because we don't know exactly what they're doing, but this is what these are the reports coming out. It's we're going to make this version that technically is developed by America, and then there's this weird fracturing while maybe still keeping it all together. It's weird.
Do you think it'll have any impact on the number of people who are actively using the app? I feel like it will be negligible at best because the platforms that are sort of competing with TikTok that have worse algorithms, I think even functionally, it's clear to me that YouTube Shorts has a worse algorithm than TikTok does. The way it just serves me content, right? But I still click the shorts. I still have the monkey in my brain.
Yeah, our brains
So
are still
I
weak
feel
and
like
mush.
you downgrade the algorithm, but I don't feel like it's going to change the way people use it, which was the only benefit that I saw from banning it.
Probably not.
Besides, I mean, I don't know if I necessarily believe in like the security concerns in this specific case, but
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think habits will change too much. You know, this could be like stalling. It's
Right.
like, you
We
it's
don't
like
know if this is-
I think both sides are just stalling in this. It just feels like everyone wants to kind of like keep things as they
Yeah,
are.
just
Well,
like-
March 2026, we'll get rid of it. But by March 2026, they'll be like, all right, we need 6
this
more
shit
months.
this is
You
gonna be
know.
like Real ID, bro. This is gonna be like Real ID at the airport. The TikTok ban is
They've been
actually
saying
gonna come to
that
fruition in
forever, dude.
2032, and they're like, all right, we gotta do it. Like,
For non-Americans, for the last 5 years, every time you go to the airport, that's a sign that says you have to get a new updated ID or you can't fly. Coming in March of this year, and then every single year,
Every
they
single
update the
year.
signs. They're just like, look, we'll give you a little bit more time, and this has been going on for what 7 years.
that's
It's
now?
like
at least,
everything
it
in
has to be at
America
least
lately.
6 years,
Yeah.
right? Like, I think I saw the first signs for Real ID at the airport. I think
moved to
in
Washington,
2018.
yeah.
And I still lived in Washington when I saw them for the first time.
That's everything. We just keep extending. We just it doesn't.
You just bail. Yeah, dude, you just bail. I mean, the thing is, what they would do is they release this. So the reason I think it's interesting is because they're saying September 5th. That's soon. That's in 2 months. So in 2 months, they release TikTok, and inside the current app, there's a button that says you must migrate to TikTok by next March. And you press a button and you download the new app, and it's exactly the same in almost every single way. They might pull it off. That'd be a kind of funny way to get around the whole thing.
Well, it doesn't get around the law that is supposed to ban it, which is still that they're
Well,
company.
Wasn't that? It was never a ban, right? It wasn't the whole idea. This was the goal of the law, was it not? To get it under. It was to
either
give this to an
sold or-
American-controlled company
Yeah, but
or
this is-
under American control. This is what the goal of the law was.
This is an app developed in America, correct? But it's still owned by ByteDance, which is still a Chinese company. The whole point of the law specifies that like you have to get the Chinese ownership out of the app that is controlled.
Hey, hold on. Run this back. Sorry, I actually skipped over this part then. Does the Chinese company still owns this as like a subsidiary, but it's just the data is being stored in the US and that's adequate?
Currently with TikTok, ByteDance owns it and develops it. TikTok is a Chinese company. However, they store, at least for the US, their data in the United States. So that's their argument, is like the Chinese don't have control over it. The data is all in the US. That is how it currently works.
Yes.
However, the United States Congress and lawmakers said that's not enough. There's a whole bunch of evidence that shows Chinese engineers and software developers still have access to the data. The Chinese Communist Party is still pretty clearly able to tell ByteDance what to do. So clearly there is influence. The core code running the app is Chinese, even though the data is stored here. The idea with this is they will move that actual development code to the United States. So the whole thing is here. And then they might be able to get around it and say, yes, we have Chinese overlords who are technically in control of the company, but the engineers are no longer in China.
Are you a Chinese tech company that's been forced to move your tech stack to the United States? Well, you can sign up for NordVPN.